Can you join?
I'm on your page.
Oh, and then there's a live. Aren't you on Sketchboard Pro?
Yeah. I need to refresh or something?
Should be good. Are we live? We're live.
That's great.
Sorry, folks, we're having some technical challenges here. A couple of boomers trying to figure out Instagram Live.
Now it shows up. Alright, now I do request something.
Yeah, now, let's see.
Request.
We got the request. View the request. Okay. Okay, everybody, we're just waiting. Oh, Ryan, there he is.
Turn my sound up. How'd you get better lighting than me? I'm all orange.
I project it. It's my aura.
Okay.
Okay, people, we'll try to figure out how to do this without more echoes and technical challenges. But we're here live at Braintree House headquarters. We have award-winning animator. You can see on the screen, Ryan Simmons. Full disclosure, he is our lead animator at Braintree House, but he has a long, storied career in Hollywood, drawing for feature films for companies like Warner Brothers and DreamWorks. Most notably, he worked on The Iron Giant and The Road to El Dorado, some of my favorites. We were super lucky to snatch him up to lead our animation here. So we thought it would be cool to bring him on. He has some excellent tips on how to help your animation if you're interested in doing 2D animation and you're probably working digitally. He's going to walk us through some of the things that he does to help give life to his animation, to make it look more traditional and less like something you might see on the web. You know, like, I don't know if you guys remember Homestar Runner and stuff like that, but it has a very distinct digital look, a web animation look. So he's going to help us with the same tools those guys use that obviously a lot of people use now. We're going to talk a little bit about his background and how he got into animation. It's a really cool story, if you ask me. I love it. And then we'll, obviously if you have questions, you feel free to throw them out throughout and we'll try to pick up on them. I think Ryan is going to be, he's a pro at this. He's been teaching, how many years have you been teaching?
8 or 9.
So 8 or 9 years teaching animation.
Yep.
So take it away. Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into animation? If you could talk about your family legacy, which I think is so cool.
Okay.
Growing up running around, Don Bluth's studio. I mean, he'll tell you.
Yeah. Okay. So my dad was a freelance animator and illustrator, and when I was 13, he got a job at Don Bluth Studios, and he was a special effects animator working on The Land Before Time, dinosaur movie. And so I got to go visit the studio. Don Bluth came over for dinner a couple times. It was pretty cool. So I kind of grew up with this idea that you didn't have to have a normal job. You can do whatever you want, which kind of surprised my wife. She's like, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be an animator. And she's like, oh, okay, never heard of that one. But yeah, so when I was 21, my dad was working on a movie called Cats Don't Dance, and he said, we need in-betweeners. So this is all hand-drawn animation. This is the light table, the paper, flipping back and forth. And so he brought home some tests, and he says, here's the key pose. We need you to fill in the blanks, so that it's smooth. And I did it, and they tested it, and they said, that's good. You got the job. So I was like floored because I was planning on going to animation school, spending a lot of money, and instead I just, boom, got in. Didn't have a portfolio, but they could see that I could do the work, and that was the important thing. So I kind of learned on the job. So I went into the effects department. So the effects department is not the character, not the fun stuff, not the character stuff. It's anything that moves that's not the character. So if the character runs through water, it's the splash. If there's a dust cloud, if there's magic, lightning, but mostly it's just body tones and cast shadows, which is like boring. But hey, it paid the bills, right? But on the side,
gotta start somewhere.
you gotta start somewhere. But on the side, I was doing my own stuff digitally. So back in 2000, I got the program Flash, and I just started doing stuff on my own, which I love because at work, even though I was working like in feature animation, I was just this little cog in this big machine, and they were like, "We need you to put body tones just on this character," you know. Whereas I could go home and I could design like a whole cartoon of my own. What's the angle? What's the background? What are the colors? Oh, what's the character going to look like? So I've been doing this since 2000, so 20 years doing it digitally. And so I did start drawing on paper and then scanning it in because I use a drawing tablet here with a stylus, and I just didn't like the feel of it because I was so used to paper. But eventually I got over it, which is good. So yeah, I have a lot of experience doing some subpar animations when I first started. Back in the early 2000s, everybody's stuff didn't look that great. And through my experience, I've just learned a lot of tips and tricks about how can I use this digital program and not have it look digital. How do I get it to look traditional?
Sure.
So if you want to roll over there and go to that screen there behind you. Okay. So what are the differences between traditional animation and digital animation? So we'll just go through this, okay? So we need to establish this. So first off, traditional animation, every single drawing has to be hand-drawn, okay? There's no computer that's going to do it for you, those in-between drawings, okay? So we're cleaning up with a pencil, and the pencil lines can vary, and that creates an organic feel to the animation. Also, we are moving our characters in perspective when we're doing poses, where we're not just stuck to one view. We can do them however we want because we have to redraw it anyway, okay? So digital art, the art can be moved by the program instead of by hand. So I can create one instance of something, put it in two different spots, and the program will move it for me, which you can't do hand drawn. Okay? The line weight stays the same, and shapes seem to slide across the screen because of this. And the characters tend to stay in the same pose and then kind of pop into the next one. It's very much a way to save time and money, is if you can just draw the character once and just kind of manipulate it a little bit, then you can save time. Okay? So I'm going to pull up an example here. This is an animation I created. Okay? This is, so first I rough it out, and this is just a sidewalk cycle. Now I knew that the character, I knew that I was doing this, I don't want to say cheaply, but cheaply. So I wasn't going to put a ton of effort into it. So if you look at the head, for example, you see exactly what I was talking about. It is just one piece of art, and we're just moving it in place, right? And the program is filling in the blanks for us, okay? So what I've got here, let me just close this. I'm going to show you the cleaned up version now. So this cleaned up version uses, it's the same piece of art, like the lower arm is one piece, the upper arm is one piece, this whole stomach is one piece. And this looks pretty good, but it has that look like it was done by a computer, a digital look to it. Again, there's nothing really moving here. This is all kind of isolated. This ear isn't moving on its own, okay? I did animate by hand, meaning I didn't let the program do it for me, but I did do this tail. I did that by hand. I wanted to get that kind of S curve to it, okay? But otherwise, it's basically kind of like a puppet.
Yeah, that's actually the term in the comments here. Jay Wing asked, why are you using the term digital to describe puppet or automatically tweened animation? Yeah, I've noticed some people call it puppet. I call it paper doll personally, but lots of terms for the same thing.
Yeah.
But I used to call it web animation, and then,
Right.
Because it is kind of cheap.
Yeah. So now let's take a look here. Now this is one of our characters for our upcoming game here at Brain Treehouse. This is Business Bear. Now this is also a sidewalk cycle, but this one, when I roughed it out, I purposely went into it knowing I'm not trying just to use the same pieces of art and slide them around. I'm going for full animation first. Then I'll worry about if I can reuse art at all. So let me just dive deeper into this. So if you look here at the keyframes, you'll see, look at the head here. As he goes along, we've got 3/4, and then it goes into a side view. Let me just zoom in on this for you. Goes into a side view, and then it looks the other way, and then it comes back. Okay? So let's just look at that. So already you can see a difference between that and the hippo animation we just looked at, is that we are purposely trying to make this look more three-dimensional. And this means that we can't just create one side view of the head and just move it and rotate it, okay? So that was the approach with this one, is to not treat it like it's gonna be a puppet animation, okay? I'm doing this digitally. I'm doing it with a program on a computer. I'm using a stylus. I'm not using a pencil and paper and a light box, but I still want it to have that same feel as if it was created that way, okay? So let's just fast forward to the cleaned up version here. Okay.
Let's just let that roll for a second, Ryan, while we answer this question. We had a couple questions about the software you use and the tools you use, and I think seasoned veteran artists tend to get set in their ways and stick to certain tools.
You're talking exactly about me. I am set in my ways. Yeah. So like I said, I've been using Animate, or as it's formerly called, Flash, for 20 years. So I can just do everything really, really fast. And yes, there are other programs out there, TV Paint, Toon Boom, Harmony. I haven't had to learn those yet. What I'm talking about today isn't specific to a certain animation program. It is, you could do this in Toon Boom. You can still have the same approach in whatever program, I just happen to be using Adobe Animate CC. Okay? If there was something I couldn't do in this, then, and I had to use another program, I definitely would. What I do like about this one is it's vector instead of bitmap, and I can smooth and perfect my lines a lot faster. Okay? So.
That's great. Oh, we have another quick question, sorry.
Sure.
How do you, in between slow movement, since the change of motion is very little, it tends to be jittery?
Yes, that's a great question. So you just have to be super precise, unfortunately. So let me just pull up a new one. So if I have, like I've been dealing with this shape, doing that bear. Here's this collar here. And then let's do another keyframe. And let's say it just barely moves like this. Let's get rid of that. Okay? So you can see, let me zoom in. Oops. So you can see that there's very little movement to it, right? It just means I have to create an in-between frame here, hit this, turn on my onion skinning, and then I would just need to come in here and carefully in between that. And yeah, if you don't do a good job, it's gonna look jittery because these lines will be bouncing in and out. But basically, in betweening means I have to go directly in between these two lines here. Okay, and then these ones here. Kind of smooths out. There are some tools. This is the brush tool, but there are some tools you can use, different brushes within Animate, and I can just smooth that out with a hotkey, and I can push and pull that. That's why I like the vector program. But there are some things you can do to make it a little bit easier for you. But yeah, if this has to be held for a long time, so I have to add a bunch of frames. So I'm just adding some here in my timeline. Yeah, it means I have to just keep breaking this down, do another one, and eventually it gets really, really tight, and it's a pain. So, yeah, there are some ways that you can kind of cheat it digitally, little things that won't be very noticeable. But let's just go back here. I just want to open up this one and this one. Okay. So take a look at those, and now just compare. Now, obviously, the speeds are different, but look at this head, this head, the hippo head here, compared to the bear's head. Okay, so there's a big difference there.
Yeah, I'd hire the guy on the right. That bear is getting the job.
Yeah, the hippo's he's been working there for a couple of years.
That dude's retired.
He's phoning it in right now, basically. Yeah. Okay. So also, remember I talked about this, how this ear isn't moving, it's just one piece. Whereas with the bear, we've got some movement on his ears as well. Okay? So, let's just move on here. Okay, let's zoom back. Okay.
I love that you do your keynotes in Animate too.
I know this program so well. It's like, should I do it in Animate or should I open up a Word doc? Let's do it in Animate. I'm a creature of comfort. Okay, so tips for creating full animation digitally. Okay, start with strong poses. This one is so important because I've taught students, and they will create their character, kind of create a model sheet, and what happens is they kind of stick to that. So do not limit yourself to your pre-made character rig. The idea of working digitally is like, wow, I can save so much time if I just keep that same view I've already created, right? So draw what is needed for strong acting. Don't worry about what is already pre-drawn in your puppet, your rig, whatever it is, because the important thing is the animation. Okay? See if the rig has what you need, but if not, create new art. Super, super important. Okay? Let me see what else we have here. So let me show you an example here. Okay. So here we have our business bear. So here's our model sheet. Here's the different turnaround views, right? Now let's pretend that I'm working in a company and they have this fully colored, and each piece is made into a part or symbol, a group, whatever you want to call it, that I can rotate and move, right? I don't want to limit myself to this, okay? So I am going to show you this animation here. So this one is the bear coming to work, and you'll see, this is not finished, but you'll see this walk cycle here. Okay? So he comes on, and he opens his door, his papers fall, he freaks out, he's got to scoop it back up, and then he zips off. He loses one of his airplanes, and he comes and grabs it really quick. Okay? So there's our finished walk cycle. Now, these poses are really important. Try to make them clear, big poses, so that you can tell easily what the character is feeling or thinking. Okay? So, like I said, there was a side view right there really quick. I could probably use the model, right there that's already been made. But where he bends down and has to pick up all his papers or whatever, just going to have to create new art, because that's what the story needed. It needed to fall. He needed to freak out. It wouldn't be great if I was creating this animation thinking, okay, he's got to drop all his stuff, but I don't really want to have to draw more than has been supplied to me. So how can I cheat it? That's the wrong mentality. Create full animation first, then see what your pre-made parts, rig, whatever, can do for you. Okay?
That's a great tip.
Okay, let's see what else we have here. Let's see. Okay. Here's another one. Okay? So here's 3/4 view. So this is Bear. He's throwing this airplane creatively. Okay? So he is wiggling his butt, throwing it, and then coming back and grabbing a new one. This is like the cycle. Okay? Again, think of the poses first. What's a good fun pose? Well, the butt sticking up and then wiggling side to side is a fun pose, right? So let's do that. Let's not worry about, our rig, our model sheet or rig doesn't have that. Who cares? Let's do it because it's fun, right? Okay. Is there any other questions right now?
Yeah, we actually have a couple.
Okay.
These might be they're a little related to each other. How do you get intuition for adding the mark in your timing chart?
You know what? Just by trial and error, you kind of learn, oh, if I put my keyframes close, this is going to happen really quick. Usually what I do is I just focus on my poses first. So even in my timeline, it might be right next to each other, because I'm just thinking of the poses. Once I feel good about the poses, then I'll start spacing out my keyframes and then watching it back and saying, okay, it needs to be slower here, let's spread it out. It needs to be quicker here, let's take out some frames. But yeah, I focus just on the art and the poses, get those out first, and then worry about the timing.
And what are your tips on getting those poses right?
Trial and error.
Same answer. You'll be using stuff here. Give us new data.
I will look up stuff online. If it's a weird hand position or something, I'll look it up. If it's someone looking tired like this, I will look up, I'll just Google tired person, hand on face or whatever, just to get inspiration. One of the rules for animation, though, is that whatever pose you come up with, really push it. Really make it bigger than it should be.
Exaggerate it.
Exaggerate it, exactly. So you can see some exaggeration here with his butt wiggle.
I will say from experience, working with animators here in the studio, we tend to do a lot of acting for each other, like acting out poses. That's a very valuable tool, I think, for an animator. If you're doing this alone and don't have anyone else that can do something around for you, I think pulling out a mirror, pulling out a camera and acting out something just to see how those poses might work. 'Cause, a lot of times, especially lately, it seems like with the way they've locked down on copyrighted materials online, and it seems like Google Images and Google searches have a lot less fruit to mine. I don't know, that's just my experience.
Yeah.
But I would say acting is a pretty useful tool for figuring out those poses.
Mm-hmm. So this is the cleaned up version here. And what you're seeing is a lot of secondary movement on the character. Obvious one is his jacket. There's a lot of movement there that is being led by his butt moving side to side. So traditional animation principles. There's 12, there's 21 of them. It depends. Originally it's 12 animation principles, and you can look those up online. And then recently somebody expanded it to 21. But one of those is secondary movement. So this one, you got the butt, you've got the tail wiggling back and forth, you've got the jacket, the ears, stuff like that.
I have a couple other questions. You want to fight through those, or if you want to move on?
Let's do another question.
This one's interesting because it's something that you and I haven't worked with too much on a project together. But the question is, have you looked into incorporating 3D assets into your 2D work, and how do you go about adding them to your workflow?
Yes, I have done that. We had one of the artists here model a
oh, that's right,
a windmill because I think mechanical things are just a pain to draw. I love organic things because you mess up a little and nobody it doesn't stick out. But yeah, we did that, and then I imported the video of the blades and the windmill spinning around, and then I kind of just chopped those up, and then we haven't cleaned it up, but I can just trace right over. In this particular project, we're not working with anything 3D, but on the Iron Giant, the way we did it is outdated, but whatever. Again, I was in the effects department. The Giant was 3D animated, and then what they would do is they would print out every single frame from the computer, and they put it on the little peg bar, and we would then draw on top of that, electricity or wires or cables or whatever.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy. I think the other, you can get a little more technical nowadays. We do have one aspect of our project we're working on where we have a 3D asset, and we're mixing in with film footage, and in that sense, we render out the asset, the 3D animated. That's all animated in 3D, and then we use After Effects to kind of composite it back together. And you could do that with this kind of animation. I think where you run into trouble, though, is making sure that your 2D animation is drawn around or interacting with that element in the environment, which I think that's also another interesting thing that I've learned from you is how much how helpful it is to have, if your character or whatever you're animating is in an environment, to know what that environment scale is like and where things are positioned ahead of time so that you can match your keyframes and animation to that.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. So these are some of the things we already talked about. Okay, so include secondary movements, the ears, the tie, the jacket, the tail on the bear, on that one, for example. Okay, have movements ease in and out, avoid even timing. This one's really important. We gain momentum and then we slow down. If you're animating digitally and you're having the program tween it for you and everything is just moving very evenly, it's going to look less believable, right? So use your easing in and out to avoid timing being boring, okay? Anticipation, that is the opposite movement before a main movement. Settling, the movements or the objects don't stop suddenly. They have weight to them, they're moving directions, they have to slow down, whatever it is, okay? And then squash and stretch. Make it cartoony. I can show you an example. Here. Okay. Okay. So again, this is our happy bear. Okay. So let's look at some of those principles. So anticipation. The main action is he's jumping up and down. But before he can go up, he's got to go down first. He's got to gather his momentum, and then he's got to jump up like that. Okay? So secondary movements, as he's up in the air, you see his tie and his jacket moving because it's being influenced by the movements of his body. Okay? And then when he comes down, we see some squash and stretch. Obviously, it just splats, and then it comes back into its form, into its final pose there. And then let's just look through this, go through this slowly here.
Yeah, slow it down.
Okay, so obviously he's off model here, but this is only being held for a brief time, so it's totally fine. So here we've got our stretch, and then it kind of compresses a little bit, and then it pops to this, and then you can see that movement right there on his jacket and his tie. So the character's not ending at the same point. Okay, so let's play that again. Okay. Any questions?
Oh yeah, we've got some really good questions. I've been kind of banking them up. Let's go back here a little bit. What are some tips for economic animation? Okay, what are tips for economic animation? What are the things you can cheat?
What are things you can cheat? Okay, so in this one, I cheated his head. When he's at the very, very top, that is the same piece of art up there. I moved
You just tilt it.
I just tilted it. There are cheats like that. Also, like the belt. So let's just go into this. So I reuse this. I reuse this hand position here, right? Let's see. You know, this is a cycle. So this foot animation is a cycle, and I'm just letting it loop over and over. I don't actually have to animate it completely all the times that he's up in the air. I just do it once. It's like 5 frames, and it's just going to go as long as he's up there. So that's also taking advantage of the digital software as well. So yeah, there's some cheats in that. Like he's got like these just oval eyes. In other animations, I'm not going to redraw that eye every single time. If I just reuse that same one, if he's not coming back and forth, if it's the same size, I'm just going to reuse it, obviously, because if I do redraw it every single time, well, now I've got to worry about, am I drawing it the same size every time? So yeah, I totally take shortcuts where I can. I felt like this one, like at the top of it, his head is being reused, but it has a little life into it. And the bigger movement is that he's happy, right? And he's got so much else going on, you don't really notice it. So yeah, you can take shortcuts like that, and I do that.
So, somewhat related, is trying to get the scene to work with the rig even worth it if your rough animation is so close to frame-by-frame animation? Why bother extending the rig?
Yep, that's a good point. It depends on the situation. If you're working on a TV show and they're like, you got to crank this sucker out, you might have to do a toned down version of it where, you know, if instead of this one, he just jumps up, just does one pose and then comes down. You could just kind of use the rig and tweak it, right? If you want to do something amazing for your portfolio, for your demo reel, go all out. Show that you can do this. Show that you've got the chops to pull off anything. But yeah, if the budget is there and they're like, yeah, just use the rig for inspiration, If you can't use anything on it, that's fine. We want great looking animation, then that's what you go for. So yeah, I think it depends on what is needed. Just like I showed in the beginning, that hippo animation, I knew this is for a client, this has got to be done fast, it's got to be done cheap, and I also know they don't even really know the difference between web animation and full animation. So therefore, I'm going to take some shortcuts.
Well, it's important to know when we talk about cheap or budget, we're mostly talking about time. Like time is our currency here. You know, to the end client, they might just want to see a dollar sign, but it's obviously time. And I will say that, like, you know, it does depend if you're looking at the purpose of the project. In this case, we have Business Bear here. He is a core character to our game, and we're using him throughout the entire experience. And what I've noticed that's great about the way Ryan works is he knows when to create symbols and library pieces of characters so that we can make it very, you know, if we have to make a change, like there's a color change or there's a slight design change, it's much easier for him to go through and to apply those changes. And that is one of the things that working in a tool like this, you know, and working digital gives you that. You know, for instance, we have a dog character, and we got really far down the line with rigging her up and all her animation sequences, and then we changed the design of her eyes pretty far into the project. And Ryan, I think it only took you, it seemed like a few hours to update her.
Yeah, definitely easier than if you'd have to go back and redraw it if it was all in hand, done by hand.
So what you kind of talked about this a little bit where you're doing squash and stretch. How do you make clear poses while also staying on model and not breaking anatomy?
That's a really, really good question. It's almost kind of like sculpting. You just kind of need to noodle with it. It doesn't, the pose doesn't come out the first time. Yeah, I will sit there and just work with the pose and just keep trying and pushing it and thinking negative space. I can show you one that's still in rough. Okay. This one is a rough animation, and here he is just dancing. So let me turn off some layers here. Let's see. Let's go to here. Coat. So on this one, I wanted him dancing, and so first I think I drew him more like this. And I think this arm was a little lower. You know, this one, this hand was down here. This one's here. There maybe a little up a little bit higher. And I just, I was like, well, what happens if I grab this and I, push it up there? Oh, I like how that is. And what happens if I grab this and, kind of rotate it this way? Or what if I need to move this just to be straight on, or down a little bit, or up a little bit? How does that feel? So yeah, that's how I go about it, is just trial and error and see if I'm getting the feeling. So there's like kind of an in-between pose. Then let me go back. So there's another one. This one, same thing. I mean, so you can kind of see how it's developed here. This is a piece, and maybe I move this down. I was like, that's pretty good, but what if I do that? So, or see how high, and then you can go, okay, now I've broken it. That obviously doesn't work. Let's put it back down here, and I can rotate a little bit more. Oh, I like that. Maybe I can go with that, or maybe I can take this and just pull that out. Maybe draw a little piece of the arm. Maybe that'll make for better silhouette. So that's kind of my process, is I just noodle on it until I feel like, hey, that's working. And then I play it back and forth like this. And I go, hey, I think that's working. Okay? So that's kind of how I go about it. You're probably thinking with this one, like how you do poses like this one, this pose here, I'm obviously kind of breaking the character, but it's a squash and stretch. And those are more felt than seen exactly. You just kind of feel that elasticy. It's when you slow it down that you go, ooh, that's weird looking, right? Any other questions? Or
Yeah, how often do you actually act things out? And when you do, or when you're watching someone else, do you also time how long each movement takes? And do you reference time in general? You know, I've seen like Miyazaki is very famous when he's storyboarding poses for, you know, pulling out the stopwatch and imagining the sequence and then drawing out according to how long he played it out in his mind.
yeah, yeah. I'm super observant. One of my favorite things is to go to the airport and just sit and watch people how they walk or how their angle of their feet or whatever. So I think being observant really, really helps. I think I can kind of picture what I want in my head, and then I start sketching it like I just showed you and just kind of move stuff. But I think I act out stuff usually when it's like the hand is moving. I'm like, okay, so that goes by the face, and then it needs to rotate here. So I do act out stuff, but if I'm animating a character running, I'm not just gonna I'm not gonna run or anything. I think it comes to spacing it out. Like I said, I start with the poses, and then I worry about the timing. And then I'll, you know, if I do something like this, I'll just start playing with their placement within the timeline and just watching it over and over again, just to see, okay, that's good, that's too fast, it needs another pose in there because it's looking jumpy or whatever.
Cool. So when you're going from roughs to inking before you color, what's the best way to ink something like this? Do you recommend using a pen tool, or do you use something else?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so this answer is going to be specific to Animate CC. I'll show you what I use to get this working. Okay. Let's just do this. Just add a layer here. Okay, so over here, I did talk about using the brush tool. There is over here, there you go. There's different types of brushes. There's a whole brush library over here. And you've got all these, which is really nice. I use this tapered round a lot. So if I double click that, and just bump up size here. So let's say, let's do, so that if I lay that down, it's going to fill in that shape. It kind of, this is a vector program, so it's going to lay down a vector line, and then it's going to stretch and fill it in. So what I do is I do something like this. I'll go like this, and then I'll hit the erase tool, and I'll just come in like that. And then again, if I want, I can select pieces of it and smooth it out. I can push and pull it. So it's kind of time consuming, and I know in other programs that there's different ways, there's different tools. This is the way I do it in Animate. So like I said, smooth that out. I can play with it like this.
We have a few people wondering if you could show, with Business Bear, in a typical Business Bear setup, how is he rigged? If we could get a quick look at like your layers and symbols.
Sure.
I think people that are kind of specific to this app are wondering that.
So here, this is Business Bear here. So I'll just kind of pull it apart. So I've got head here, ears, these are symbols, that's a piece, arm, right? I have it so that he's just blew up.
What have you done to my bear?
I deconstructed him, right? So what I'll do, I'm just going to undo that and put that back. So right here, so I get to about here, and this is my next big pose. So I clean this one up, and if I go back and forth, I can say, all right, what can I reuse from one to another? And not a lot. The feet, obviously, but let me see, which one is this? Victory. Let me pull up the rough for this one, and then you can kind of see. Which one is it? What? This one? Find out. Oh. No. Sorry, let me just find the right one. 2. Let's try this. Yeah, here we go. This is kind of rough. Okay, so there's my next pose. You can see it's not, there's not a lot there. So what I did, let's go back to this one, is I kind of created it using all these groupings so that I can manipulate it. And so I create this one pose, and then I can just kind of move them around a little bit, and then I get these other poses. So this is actually what we talked about in the beginning. This is one piece, and I'm actually reusing it. I'm almost reusing all of these, right? Because it's so close, it's such a small movement, and there's more life on the ears right there. But so that's how this is set up. I'm putting these all in one layer. I know within Animate you can separate each piece and put them on their own layer. That is useful if they're symbols and you plan on tweening them. Because I'm doing this by hand, meaning I'm not relying on the program to tween it for me, I'm just going to put them all on the same layer and I'm going to manipulate them by hand. Okay? So here we have another one, and again, just with the angle and everything, going back to that one, there's not a lot to reuse. I think I reused the tie. I'm not sure. Nope, I didn't even reuse the tie. But I could go back and take this tie, you know, and I can scale it up and I can drag it down. The thing about that though, and this is really important when doing stuff digitally, if I do this and for some reason I need it that big, let me just go in here and get rid of that color. Oops. Because it's hard to see. What happens is I get these really, really thick lines, right? So it's probably beneficial to just draw it, redraw it. Because that's another thing, whatever that line width is, you know, draw it and then you get the right width that you need, because that'll be something that sticks out too. That's why with traditional animation, because it's all done with the same size pencil, the lines stay consistent. With digital, you can do something and say, oh, I did it too big, and you can scale it down. Now all of a sudden the details are really, really fine compared against what it's, you know, if the tie had detail on it, and then it looks off. Or if I have to scale up the nose, and now the lines just around the nose are super, super thick, it's going to look off. So that's something you really need to look out for working digitally, is make sure, and I do that all the time, I'm always like resetting, making sure my brush is at the same width so that I don't run into that problem.
Cool. We have some other questions I'd like to get through really quickly here if we can. How do you deal with shadows on the bear? Like he has rim shadows and he has like a cast shadow, and we have pretty consistent lighting like that throughout the game. How do you deal with that and going between these frames?
That's a good question. So let me find this one. Oh, let me open up that that one, the walk cycle that we looked at beforehand. So what I do, I just do a simplified shadow, right? So on this one, what I do is I just create a oval that just goes right underneath the character. And if the character spreads its legs out, I'm just going to go out a little bit, right? And then what I did for the hand holding the briefcase, I kind of made that another piece that just follows right underneath that. And you'll notice that even though the briefcase is a rectangle object, I purposely stylized, I purposely went again with just the oval because it just needed to just match the movement of it.
Actually, sorry to interrupt, but you did an animation last year for Lightbox. Actually won the animation competition that Wacom was putting on, and it had some pretty interesting shadows, I thought. Like different than what we do anyway, which is like typical daylight shadows. Are you able to pull that up and show, or putting you on the spot?
I don't think I have it on this.
Is it on your Instagram?
It is on my Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, go check that out, everybody. Looking at shadow stuff. I don't know if you wanted to mention anything about it, but you did like a cast spotlight shadow.
Yeah, and my Instagram is ryansimmons.animation. But just to follow up on this, with these body tones on this character, I'm just doing them by hand. As I clean up one pose, I'm thinking of the lighting, and I'm thinking, okay, around the back side, it needs to stay about this thickness, and I just build it into each pose. And then as I do the breakdowns and the in-betweens, I in between that line as well, and just fill it with the darker color. So yeah, I put it on the poses first, but there's no magic lighting button within this program that does it for you.
Yeah, other software might have it.
Yeah.
And while we're looking at this pretty closely, how do you go about simplifying clothing creases?
Having started in animation when I was young, I've learned that you purposely design, you purposely simplify. So what I do is there's an arm. I'll do a little line there. So here's, we've got the bear's hand. I'll do a little line there, like that. Where else? The legs, maybe the bottom of the pants.
So that's mostly taken care of in design, is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah. The thing is with animation is you got to keep it simple because you have to redraw it so many times. It just becomes, like the last thing you ever want to draw or animate is someone wearing like a plaid shirt, and you'll see cheats on that all over the place. Nobody wants to do that. But yeah, I just keep them simple. Just one little mark or something, or if it's like you've got like a belt and the shirt it's coming out, I'll just do little lines like that.
Yeah, I think if you look really closely at feature animation, a lot of times I think you'll be surprised by how simple they are with their lines and creases and clothing. I mean, you can look at Disney and look at Studio Ghibli especially. There's a lot of times there's not much line work going on in clothes, even though a lot of it relies on the shape of the clothes. Like they'll have big billowy clothes, and then it's kind of fun because it becomes kind of a big organic shape that you can move around and manipulate.
I want to show you this really quickly. So this is a still from Cats Don't Dance. This is the first movie I worked on. And so just to kind of prove how non-digital it was, in this scene, Danny is holding a candelabra, and he's shoving it in the other character's face. Now, the character animators did not do the candelabra. That's part of the special effects department. So what we had to do is we drew one, and we made a photocopy of it. right? And then we had to line it up with his hand and then just like cut it out of the photocopy and kind of paste it on the paper just so it matched up with his hands. Like, it's just so funny because now that's something that's so easy to do, right? So like I have this candelabra here. I can just go here and make another keyframe and rotate it and just say, hey, tween that for me, and it'll do it for me now. But back here, I had to keep tracing back this stupid, I had to keep copying and pasting it because it was just going to be held in that one view. And then after that, we had to do another pass where we added the flames to it. But yeah, that was back in '95 when we did this. Obviously, there was some 3D elements incorporated into this movie, but it wasn't widespread. But yeah, I looked back on that and I thought, wow, a lot has changed to go from that to that. But that's one of the things about digital versus hand-drawn is that these things tend to move in perspective. He was just kind of jousting with this one, so we knew it was just going to stay in that one position. So we had to get creative with it, but there was no computer to do that for us like there is now.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We're getting close to wrapping up here. I want to ask like one more question that I think might be helpful. Is could you? You're a very fast animator compared to a lot of people I've seen and worked with. Could you? It might be helpful for, especially for younger animators, to know how long does it take you now to rough something out and then to animate? Like let's just say like one business bear scene or action. How long does it take you to rough it out, and then how long does it take you to finish it to completion? And then, do you have any way to compare that? How long it might have been compared to like 20 years ago for you?
Yeah, obviously 20 years ago it would have taken me forever. Let me pull up a file, and I can show you. So we have these bouncing pigs, right? Outside pig, rough, this one. Okay. So these are just the keyframes of this guy. And this took me 3 hours and 45 minutes to rough animate. Basically, it's just a bouncing ball. And then you add the secondary objects to it, floating up and down. But yeah, so that's just basic bouncing ball, and then it was adding in all the little nuances and stuff like that. That was 3 hours and 45 minutes. To clean it up, it takes like 3 times as long. I think, I'm thinking this took like maybe 15 hours to clean up. That seems a lot. The business bear ones take a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, the rough part goes fast. The cleanup takes forever if you want to make it look good, but it's worth it.
That's awesome. Okay, we're down to our last minute here. So I thank you so much for coming in on Saturday and doing this. I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody's questions, but you're welcome to. I can let people can message Ryan, and he's pretty helpful. He'll or comment on this, and he can answer some questions for you that we didn't get to. If you are interested in seeing, I love that Ryan used a lot of our own stuff for this demonstration because it's self-promoting. These are characters from our video game that we've been working on for the last year. It's all hand-drawn, all hand-painted, 2D animated Metroidvania platformer, kind of geared toward all ages. It's called Cloudy. We love these characters. We'd love to see what Ryan's done with them. He's been so helpful in having him on our team and lead up our animation. We'll be posting this video to our stream in a little bit. Thank you everyone for coming out. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Lightbox weekend. And we hope to see you soon. Follow along on Sketchboard Pro for more stuff like this.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.